Hi, how you going?
Fantastic. I absolutely love your story, and I love people that I don't know, just believe in something enough to. I've got this saying, that if you want the beautiful field on the other side, you've got to scratch through the blackberries, and you're going to get beaten up all the way through it. And when people
Yeah,
actually go, I really like that field over there, I'm going to have a crack at the blackberries. I've got so much admiration for them, and that's what you've done. And I recognize that you've had a team with you, and you're going to, you're not going to let me sort of give you all the credit. I get that, but
true.
you're the voice right now, and I want to hear about it. So, um, you're a filmmaker and a photographer, so you've already got that going as your business. But then you've also taken on this other project, and not just to be the filmmaker. There's so much in it for your heart, and that is the Mt Alexander Falcons. So it's an all-gender footy club. So, ta take us back to, like, this is in Castlemaine, or Mount Alexander, near Castlemaine. Like, what was happening just before that? What were you doing? Just making films and thinking your life was full, empty, half full?
Not at all, to be honest. Yes, definitely my life was very full and I really thought I had it all together. Like I thought, everything that I'd worked for and set up was sorted and my life was just going to continue in this way. And what happened was COVID. And in that process, I'm an independent photographer and filmmaker. I run my own company, and as soon as we hit lockdown, I lost all of my work. I remember so distinctly on the 16th of March, every single one of my clients in the shoots that I had lined up for the next 3 months ahead all called on the same day and
Oh,
said, we're cancelling for now. And so in the space of sort of an 8-hour workday, I went from feeling like the next 3 months financially was sorted to having no idea when I was going to get paid next. And the government hadn't sorted out, all that stuff.
yep.
And I had a bit of a crisis in that first 3 months of wondering, were my clients going to remember me when things got started
Yep.
again? And how was I going to pivot? And what I came to was the only way to create stability in this space where I didn't know what was going to happen and how long this was going to take was to enroll in a master's. So I started a master's of photography,
Yeah.
um, and then everything changed. And so that's how everything just started to come about from there.
And that was with Photography Studies College in South
It
Melbourne.
was, yeah,
I
in
went
South
there
Melbourne, yeah.
too. I did two
Oh,
years.
did you?
Yeah, yeah. When I
Oh,
read that, I'm
okay.
like, oh,
Yeah.
I went there too. Yeah. That
Yeah,
was,
it's such a great college.
yeah, that was many years ago, but I really enjoyed the quirkiness of it, just going down there, because being from the country, you go down on the train and you'd spend an hour beforehand, and then it's been this quirky little building. And when I say quirky, like not a bad, but just an old building there's a feel about that place. It's beautiful.
Yeah, well, it's actually all changed. It's in a very brand new building now, and
Oh,
because of COVID, they also pivoted, and so a lot of my classes I could do online, and so I really was just sitting in my home in the country in regional Victoria, yeah, starting
doing
this
your stuff.
course.
Oh, well, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It doesn't matter. So how does that, if you're already doing photography and video, how did that, like, by doing a master's, what did that add to your business?
Yeah, so I guess because I was in the midst of this crisis, I was feeling like, I guess reflecting that I knew how to do my job with my eyes closed and I wanted to try and challenge myself. I thought what a phenomenal opportunity COVID is
Yep.
to go into a space where you lose everything that you thought you were and you have this potential to rethink and reimagine and potentially come out the other side doing something totally different.
Yep.
And what other time in your life would you mid-career purposefully push everything aside and rethink? Like you just don't, because you get to sort of your 40s and you've got mortgages and some people have kids and pets and whatever. You've got all this responsibility. So it's so rare to get mid-career and be forced to
Yep.
lose everything that you thought you had
Yep.
and face yourself and think, well, what am I going to do? And so for me, it was the challenge of learning to make differently, seeing what was possible in the worst moment, of
Yep.
my career. what is it, what's possible to make of this? And so that then became a really fun and inspiring challenge rather than sitting and wallowing in everything that I'd lost.
Yeah. Well, I did exactly the same thing, but I did a lot of deeper personal exploration. You know, who am I? Like who's under
Yeah.
you? And it got hard. That got really hard, but exciting as well. You know, and one thing led to another and led to another, and I came out such a better person. So I'm really grateful for COVID. You know, although I understand that it was really shit for a lot of people, but
Yeah.
and it would have been shit for us. It was shit for us, but I just decided this is the time. And when you say when else do you get time? When my sister died, I actually quit what I was doing, and I decided, you know what, I've always wanted to work in disability, and so I went back to TAFE to do disability, and that so I think sometimes we've got to have these moments, you know, that just
Mm.
almost wipe us off our feet, you know, and then we stand up again and go, hang on, I don't really like what I'm looking at. I'm gonna turn around and
Yeah.
look at something else. So yeah, I absolutely love that, and I think that, you know, I've heard of many stories. I'm not criticizing, but I heard of many stories of people that just were defeated by COVID. You know, just sat on the couch and just sort of said, well, this is fucked. This is it. What am I? But you know, I'm just pleased that I'm not wasn't one of them, and it's not a criticism to how the way people handle stuff. But you know, it
I think, yeah, I think that's why I did sign up for the masters, or I would have at least signed up to something because I knew myself well enough to know I was really probably not going to come out well if I didn't put a
yeah,
structure around myself. Like I do well when I have structure and when I know my direction. And
yeah,
when I don't and I feel lost, I really struggle. So I kind of knew quite quickly I needed to put something in, and a course just seemed like the easiest way to do that very quickly. So
yeah,
yeah, yeah, I definitely would have been one of those people on the
yeah,
couch had I not
yeah.
had something to lean into.
Or on the bench. I got a point. Or on
Or
the bench.
yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree. I started the podcast. I wanted to start it. My younger sister had a cardiac arrest 9 days, 7 days before I was going to start it, and it's that
Uh,
sort of of course I often joke when I'm doing a keynote saying, oh God, I was talk about inconsiderate, you know, I wanted to start a podcast, but she survived, so like I can have a bit of fun with,
in joke.
yeah, have a bit of fun with it. And then we had the bushfires, and then we had COVID, and I did the same as you in that regard. I started the podcast. I thought, screw it. I just have to do it, you know, because it would make me show up every week. Do you know that same
Mm,
showing up every week? I had to find a guest. I had to find, conversation. I had to show up. So had to produce
yeah.
it. So I think that, yeah, that's a big drive. Now, this Mount Alexander Falcons. So here's what I understand. You were just minding your own business one day. You went into the supermarket, you know, just as we do, and you saw a sign. Now tell us about that. And not a sign from the universe, but maybe it was.
It kind of was. I feel like it was now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I walked out of the supermarket and I saw this A4 poster which said, "Come and try football. Women and gender diverse people welcome. No experience necessary." And that was the first time I'd ever seen the word gender diverse
Yep.
on a poster actively encouraging people to get involved in any sport, let alone AFL, which I had quite a visceral dislike of the game. One, because I grew up in Sydney and I just didn't understand it. You know, I
Yeah.
grew up with rugby league, so AFL didn't make sense to me as a game, but also because I had gone to one game in Melbourne and just the sitting in the crowd felt extremely unsafe and not fun. And so I thought, oh, I have to go and see who is creating an
Yeah.
AFL club that is actively welcoming someone like me.
Yeah.
But then at the same time going, oh, gross, footy. Like, I don't know that I want to do that.
Yeah.
But, this was just the timing was perfect because I had started this master's. I'd gone in with an idea of what I wanted to do, and it was something that I already knew how to do. And so my lecturers really called me on that and said, "You could do this with your eyes closed. Why are you trying to do this within a master's? We can't do anything to help you with that project." So if you really want to make the most of this master's, scrap that idea and find something new. And so I was looking for something new. And so when I saw that poster, I thought, well, maybe I can go down and just photograph some of the
Mm.
players that might turn up. And, you know, my idea really was to challenge gender roles and stereotypes within image making. And so I thought, well, you know, women's footy probably suits that quite well. But what I didn't expect was that when I went down and walked into that space that they'd created, that I would feel the most welcome and the most calm that I've ever felt in my life.
Mm.
And so I had a kick of the footy on that first come and try session, and I loved it. And I thought, yes, this is the perfect project to document. I spoke to the executives. They said, great, you know, this is a new club. We'd love someone to document how it's growing. And I had this conundrum then that I wanted to document it, but I also wanted to play and be part of this community
Yeah.
that was being built. And so the only way I could see to do that was to put cameras on my body and film while I was learning to play. And so that documentation started, but very quickly, within the first 2 weeks, I think it was, we were told that we weren't going to be allowed to play. The AFL had rejected our application.
Uh,
And so immediately I thought, oh my God, this is a story. Like, who
mm.
in, it was 2021 at the time, who in their right minds, you know, particularly in COVID where sports clubs are losing all of their
Mm.
players, who would say to a bunch of players that are turning up saying we want to play, who would say no?
Yep.
And so I was just in the right position at the right time,
Mm.
ready to do the work, and it took off.
And the lack of connection too, I might say. Do you, lack of
Yeah.
connection? Like it's what a perfect time. Who would be saying no, you can't. So then you started out. I'm gonna be a filmmaker, but I'm also gonna have a crack at it. Were you expecting to make a full-blown film out of it? Like, did you just think I'm going to
No.
document this, take some photos, and yeah.
Yeah, at that point, I was still thinking I might do an exhibition or something. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. When it became clear that we were being rejected, I thought this is more of a story. So maybe I'll make a little 5 or 10 minute film that goes and sits in an exhibition space with a bunch of photos. But as it continued, just one thing after it was textbook
Mm.
gender inequality. Every single step of the way, everything we were trying to access was being denied us. And so I was just filming it. And so I kept filming and kept filming. And every time I felt like I was getting to, I could see what the ending might be, something else would happen. I'd be like, okay,
Mm.
that can't be the ending. We've got more and more and more. And then, yeah, within about a month, I think I was saying to my lecturers at Masters, this is a feature film. And they were saying, it can't be, that's too big for a Masters. You
Mm.
can't do a feature film. And I was like, but I have to now because I'm so immersed in it. And this is so wrong. And this is exactly what the problem is with the world. Like, summed up in one little football club, this is how
Mm.
we explain gender inequality and barriers and how to show how to combat that. Because it wasn't just all the negative stuff that was happening. In contrast, it was all the positive steps that the club was taking to continue to build a space where everyone was truly welcome,
Mm.
and all the steps that clubs need to do to be able to create a very different space to the traditional male dominated clubs.
Mm. How did you have enough people there to form a full club? Like how many people showed up for this? I know it wasn't just one day, but like this come and try. Like how many people ended up being part of this phenomenon? There's kind of like, no, screw it, I want to be part of this. Like, was it a full team or more?
Yeah, it was phenomenal. So we're in the Castlemaine region. So we've got about, I think the population here is around 6,000.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we were rejected was the AFL felt like there wouldn't be enough people wanting to play football in the women's league. I reckon the first come and try session, there was maybe 20 or 30 people that turned up. And then once things got going and we had actual memberships where we could sign up to, there was, by the end of the first year, where we had absolutely no games that we could play, we had 70 signed up playing and
Wow.
training members.
Wow.
Um, And still, so we're now in our second official season and we've got 50 players on
Wow.
our books. So every week we've got a pool of 50 players to choose from.
Oh, so it's not like
Yeah.
seniors and reserves. It's just one team and out of 50. Oh my God, wow. And did
Yeah,
you,
at the moment it is. Yeah.
that's yeah, that's massive. Did you just then you said a women's league. So did you being a well, I guess it's women and gender diverse, but you welcome everybody, like it's not just women. So how does
Yeah.
that go, having different, such gender diversity in a women's league? Like, is this challenged often, or is it questioned, or does
No,
people?
and within the leagues there are trans women, non-binary people, um, and there's no issue. And I think what becomes very clear when you get on the ground and you start playing is that you realize that these people that have been politicized by people who have never set foot on an actual playing field with these people, they're some of the safest players on our field.
Mm,
Because they, trans women in particular, have often grown up playing footy before their transition. And so they know how to tackle safely, they know how to play well. They're
mm,
not out to prove anything. I find the experience of playing with trans women so great. In fact, if I could play against a team full of trans women, I absolutely would pick them over cisgendered straight women any
yeah,
day
yeah,
because of the gender binary is so strong, particularly in regional Victoria. What I've found is some um, cisgendered women are really trying to prove to the men in their footy club that they're strong enough and powerful enough to play this game that they've been denied for so long.
yeah.
And so they go onto the field with sometimes very little skill
Mm,
out to destroy the enemy, which is the traditional male way of playing sport.
yeah,
And they're so dangerous.
yeah.
And that is not remotely the experience that I've had with trans women. So I think, yeah, there has, for as long as we've played in this league, there's been trans and gender diverse women in the teams that we've played against and within our team, and there's no issue from anyone. Although, having said that, there has been instances of transphobia, but because of the culture that we've created in our club, that gets shut down very quickly, and the
Mm,
opposition um, very clearly gets told, if this is going to continue, you're not welcome here. So you
yeah.
decide, do we play football peacefully or do you leave? And within
Wow.
seconds it's gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, that's powerful because in my experience, people that I know, there's often not the courage to do that. It's often feel a sense of being outnumbered, being shut down, that kind of stuff. So I absolutely love that culture. If you, how many people, when you say I've seen the I've seen the cis women get onto the footy field and no thank you. And I
Yeah.
used to play footy. I played not no it wasn't a league. It was just sort of an offshoot of the men's, and it would charity games. Just the odd
Yeah.
fun game for women. I got knocked out nearly well, I did get knocked out every single time because I just bloody mental, just smacking into you and just punching you in the
Yeah.
head. And it was like after a couple of seasons, I thought, I'm not going back to this shit. This dumb. My two
Yeah.
sisters, my sister and my niece played. They both actually both smashed their finger, one of their exactly the same finger, and both had exactly the same plastic surgery and the same plastic
Oh,
surgeon. And he said, "What the hell's going on with your family?" But I agree. There's just this kind of like got to get in and belt them up. But
yeah.
when how many of you, when you're talking before about some of the trans women have already played footy and they know the rules and all that, so how many in your 50 or, well, yeah, in the 50 have never played footy, but that this is their first club?
Oh, most. Yeah. So most of our players, particularly at the very start, but even now, I would say maybe 40 to 45 of us would never have played football before.
Wow.
Most had a kick with their brothers as kids,
Mm,
um, and then gone on to play other sports, so netball, soccer, hockey. Um, we've all, well, not all of us, but the majority of us have played sports for most of our lives. So we have skills in terms of we have fitness and we can
Mm.
read the ball and all of that sort of stuff. But learning the fundamentals of footy, yeah, very few of us have had those skills coming into the team.
Mm.
So it's been a learning curve for for
Wow.
a lot of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you get flogged or or not?
So the first year we got absolutely flogged. So the very first year, all we could organise was some practice matches with the local league, and we were losing by 100 points.
Yeah.
And then this year, this is our second season in an official league, and we're currently sitting around third or fourth on the ladder. It's sort of
Wow.
shifting because of percentage points, but
Yeah.
yeah, we're definitely competitive now.
Mm.
And that's interesting in itself. How do you balance um, a culture that says anyone's welcome, come and turn up, we're here to participate rather than to win, and yet we're starting to win, and so things do start to get a bit more serious, and so
Yeah.
there's a balance happening at the moment where we're trying to juggle the competition versus the participation, and how do
Yeah.
we keep those both as important things.
But even if you were putting in the better players to win, it sounds to me like you've still got a system in place that to make sure that everybody who is involved is still really has a strong sense of belonging and a strong sense of this is my home, regardless of whether I'm on the field or whether I'm doing something else. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, and we actually select a squad. So the traditional way of doing it is at the very start of the season, you select a squad from everyone who's turned up, and the people that don't make the squad just disappear.
Mm.
But we accept everyone, and every week we select a squad. So every
Yeah.
week there'll be a few people that sit out, and they become our volunteers. And there'll be a team selected, and so that is fairly distributed. So while I guess the coaches are always thinking about what positions are our strongest players going to be and where are our weakest players going to be, they're never picking a squad where it's only our strongest players and the weakest
Yeah.
players are left
Yeah.
off. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. When you said before, um, most people have played a sport when they were younger. Did you play a sport when you were younger? Because you said footy. Ah, yuck. Do you know like what did you play when you were younger?
Yeah, so I ended up playing soccer for a long time. That was my sport, but I had a lot of troubles getting into that in the beginning. So originally, and this is in the film, Equal the Contest, originally I had started playing T-ball because I wanted to go on and play baseball, and that was the stepping stone. But I was told after my first season of T-ball, even though we won, I was the only girl in my team, and we won our the premiership that year. I was told all the boys will go on to play baseball, and you won't because there's no
Wow.
place for you in baseball. And so that's when I started to play soccer. And again, this was in 1990. I played one season of soccer. I was the only girl on a boys' team, and then at the end of that season, I was told you won't play the next season either. And so I'd had these 2 years in a row where I'd picked sports that I thought I would really love and did love, and got to the end of that season, was told no. And so then I waited a couple of years, and then I think I was about 12 or 13 when a women's team was started in my area of soccer. And so
Mm.
one of the fathers came, and old school rang up the landline and asked to speak to me and said, can you come and play? We're starting a 17 women's team. And so at 12, I joined this 17 women's team, which was far more dangerous than playing with, the 12-year-old boys that I knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I stayed in that team up until 17, and then we started a 19s. And then by that stage, women's soccer was really starting to come through in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really challenging trying to find, the sports I was really drawn to as a young person
Mm.
were at that stage considered only for boys, and so I really struggled with that idea. I didn't want to play netball because I didn't want to be in a skirt. There was a lot of sports that were supposed to be for me that didn't feel like that was where I fitted. So
Mm.
yeah, it was a real challenge.
And not only playing netball in a skirt, Probably I didn't want to play netball because I didn't want to fuck my knees up for the rest of my life as well. That's another. That's
That
another.
too, all the stop starting. Yeah.
So when you I'm just going back. I'm trying to think. That would have been really hurtful, right? So to be told, you can't. You may be good, but you're not a boy, and so therefore that's not going to happen. And as you know, Penny Cooler-Reid, who coached Collingwood to grand final and played AFL. She's a mutual friend of yours and mine. She connected us. So she went out and she was told you can't play footy, and eventually it turned into a court case. And if it wasn't for her, there wouldn't be, well, I'm gonna say she's pretty 99% it's because of her. That there is
Yeah.
now women's football. And so you've done the same. And I know it wasn't just you. I know there was already this group there, but you're still sort of shining the light on it, saying this isn't bloody fair. It's like something's got to give. Imagine how many girls are out there. And I always tell Penny that she's a real role model, and I sort of point girls to, if I hear of young girls playing footy, I say, go and check out Penny, like she did it for you, because I think
Yeah.
how many people, and maybe not so much now, but how many women or girls never got to enjoy sport, and I'm actually going to go down a real morbid path now. Are they really sporty, really healthy, really fit? Sorry, you can't play because you're not a boy. Turn to depression, anxiety. You know what I mean? Turn to drugs, alcohol, whatever. Just a different kind of lifestyle. Turn to eating junk food because I'm not worthy. Do you know that kind of shit? It could be, and
Mm.
let me go the whole hog. Could be having freaking heart attacks and God knows what, and diabetes, all sorts of shit, because they felt like they weren't worthy to be a sports person, or because of
Yeah.
some arsehole, some of the patriarchy who says, oh no, that's not ladylike for girls. You might hurt your boobs or some shit they used to say back in the old days, that kind of stuff.
Your uterus might fall out.
Yeah. Might fall out just from having sex. But anyway, regardless, regardless of that, it's yeah. Now, where was I going with this question? Oh, so when you having those years of rejection and eventually go play soccer for a girls' team, so you're still playing soccer, but there's still, I would imagine, and maybe you couldn't articulate it back then because you were young. That still that resentment and that bitterness, sitting under the surface, like I'm not good enough. I'm a girl, and you make me feel shit for being a girl. Do you know that? So that even if you couldn't articulate it back then, do you know that feeling would be sitting in your bones? So when you go and
Yeah,
see
and
this,
definitely,
no, go.
yeah.
I want to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt like that. And I definitely felt like that at that age. I was so furious at the injustice of all the barriers that were coming up for me. I was very aware of gender inequality at 8 or 9 years old, even though I wouldn't have called it that at that time.
Mm.
I just would have said that this is really unfair and this is shit. And what's the difference?
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
when I was playing against boys, there wasn't a difference in my strength or my skill or my
Mm.
ability or a fear of me getting hurt. I mean, often it was the boys that were crying when, they got pushed over or something. I wasn't crying. Uh, it just seemed utterly ridiculous that I was
Yeah.
being held in this light that wasn't a reality. Like, fair enough if I was doing cartwheels in the background and crying if the ball came near me. Sure, tell me to get off the field, but that wasn't what was happening. And
Yeah.
I was so angry, and was so angry for a really long time, I think, because of those experiences. So yeah, I think well, I knew that as I was making this film, that my experience is not just this weird, isolated
Mm.
experience, that this is the majority of women and gender diverse people's experience. So I kind of, as I was making the film, people were saying to me, oh, no one's going to watch this because no one watches women's sport.
Mm.
No one's interested. And I thought, bullshit, you wait. I'm going to make this film and this is going to resonate with at least half the population.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was the momentum that I needed. Like, I think
Yeah.
I just had all that anger that I'd stuffed in at 8, 9, 10 years old, and I was waiting for an outlet for it. And this film was the perfect. As soon as I saw what was unfolding, I was like, here we go. Here's the fuel that I've been waiting for somewhere to put.
Yeah, yeah, but you wouldn't have been able to articulate that at a young age, so you're just carrying
Yeah.
this shitty feeling forever. By the way, I have to say that the film is called Equal the Contest, and I did forget to say that at the start. So, fantastic, fantastic film. When going back to that, that shitty feeling underneath, and yes, you got to that point, like you went and saw everybody and thought, I'm going to take photos, this is great, I'm going to do a film, finally I got a voice, finally I got somewhere for this to go. But when you first saw the sign for footy, did that raise that resentment, that shittiness, like fuck you, did that come up, like what's the point, or were you more mad, like, by Jesus, I've got a chance now to show. I don't know. What did you feel?
No, I felt excited. I felt like, oh my God, I could play footy. And at no point did I go, but I'm 42 and that's ridiculous. Learning a contact sport that you've never played at 42 years old. Like, men that have played their whole lives are not playing by 42, and
Yeah,
people
yeah,
are dropping off, not starting. And what happened when I did start playing was that it was so joyous. I felt like I went all the way back to my 8, 9 year old self
yeah,
and got to start my life again. It's like, oh,
yeah,
this is what it feels like to be completely in my body, expressing all of my physicality with total abandon and joy and being encouraged.
yeah.
So I didn't feel anger at first. I just felt completely elated. What came later when I was making the film was real grief. Like I went through complete stages of grief in the making process because I was really realizing how much I'd missed,
Mm,
to go to kind of start this sport at 42 and go, oh my God, I'm kind of good at this.
mm,
And my body's so capable. But I'm 42. Like realistically, I'm not
mm,
going anywhere with this. And
mm.
I've got a very limited shelf life in my ability to see where I can take my skills. And so I was having these moments, and there's a very raw moment in the film, which actually was never meant to be
Yeah,
seen.
yeah,
I was doing all these video diaries for my master's before I knew I was making a film, and I thought I'll just record what I'm feeling as I go because that'll help me write a better thesis. And
mm,
then when I realized I was making a film, I was like, oh my God, these are perfect for these
yeah,
moments.
yeah,
But yeah, I had this deep moment of grief where I played my first game of footy and then realized that actually I'll never be particularly good. Like I'm all right. I'm a decent player, but there's, at 42, there's only so far you can go,
yeah,
and I'll never have a shot at seeing where I could have gone.
yeah.
So yeah, the grief was really real throughout this making process, and that came up after I got to experience all this joy first.
Mm. I'd be really pissed off with that, actually, because I'm 61 and I often think, I often think about things that I wished I had have started, but not to do with sport, not that sort of stuff, but music, and that's my thing, and so I get that, but I'd be really pissed off in the sense that some freaking table of men got to make this decision, that we're more important than women, and without any thought of the consequence of what it would do to people's confidence or to their
Yeah,
self-esteem or to their health, like their sense of belonging. I mean, I could go on and say 1,000 things in this, describing the consequence of a thoughtless. And I don't know how it worked. I don't know if it was a table full of men, whatever it was bloody man that made the decision. And I'm not being a sexist pig. I'm not doing that. But it's kind of like I get cranky about that, because it's like, why you can't just go, well, oh, we're the men, we're the boss, and that's what's going to happen, without any thought about how this is going to impact other people. And it probably pisses me off because it still happens. It happens day
yeah,
in, day out, and you talked about, being aware of gender inequality at 8 or 9. I wasn't. even aware of gender inequality until I was even in my 50s, because and it wasn't that I didn't care. It just, I was such a solid tomboy, that I would do anything I fucking want to do, and that's all there was to it. And but I never wanted to play foot. Does that make sense? I never wanted to do
Yeah.
things that, how can I, that was specifically gendered. Does that make that was
Yeah.
so if I want to build sheds, I go and build sheds. If I wanted to rebuild cars, I rebuilt cars. If I wanted to work as a buddy, whatever, I just did it because I could. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I think I was just lucky that all the
Yeah.
jobs that I enjoyed were not um, specifically men only. Does that make sense? I was just the
Well,
tomboy amongst
those,
everyone.
yeah, all those things that you rattled off are generally men only, and most femme women would feel extremely uncomfortable. And I would say there's a lot of women who wouldn't have done those things
Mm. Oh,
because of their not being accepted. And perhaps the way you looked and the confidence that you had, and I assume that came from some sort of support you had, whether that was in your family or friendship circle or older people in your life. Yeah, you did, I think, get really lucky in terms of
mm.
of being able to still forge through those paths.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think for a lot of women, that's definitely not the case for those industries as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that I had a lot of support. I had a great family who never stopped us. It's an interesting thing because you get some parents that are really supportive and they're like, "You can do it, you can do it." My parents never said that, but they never said you can't do it. So it was
Mm,
kind of like
that's
they didn't.
huge.
I know they didn't say much, but it was kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah, do whatever you want. But long they
Yeah.
had two rules: as long as you're happy and as long as you don't hurt anyone. Which I
Yeah.
think fine, great, great. So
Yeah.
it's
That's
interesting.
massive.
It is massive,
Yeah.
I
And
think.
that's, yeah. And not a lot of people do even get that. Like I certainly
Mm,
didn't. My family was very gendered. And
yeah,
so it was very clear. I was made very clear that some things are for boys and some things are for girls. And so you have to stay in your lane. And I guess, part of really rejecting gender as I got older was me saying, fuck this shit. Like I fucking hate the gender constructs that we've
yeah,
created because it limits everyone.
yeah,
People think it doesn't, but it does. It limits absolutely everyone. There's absolutely things that men would have tried had they not been so rigidly told that's not for them, and same for women. And it
yeah,
creates these really, really damaging boxes that we stay in. Like our rates of gender-based violence are massive because
mm,
men are stuck in this box that they don't know how to get out of, and
mm,
the tension that builds within that just leads to explosions.
yeah,
So yeah, I really can't stand the way we've classed gender.
mm,
And I don't think that's a queer thing. I don't think that's
no,
about being gay. I think it's just about saying the way we've constructed gender is not healthy for anyone, and
mm,
I don't want to be a part of it at all.
yeah,
But I did get, you talked about before saying you would have felt pissed off, and I absolutely did also
mm,
get to that point, feeling pissed
yeah,
off with the people that made the decision to reject us from playing footy. And
mm,
I think that was really, as soon as I kind of started meeting those people and hearing their rhetoric, and I was just like, I'm going to shine a light on this
mm,
because no, I've had enough, like all that fire from being a kid when I couldn't argue. I was like, no, now I'm in my 40s and I have the power of media behind me. I'm going to tell this story and I'm going to blow up this little closed world you have where
mm.
you get to make your decisions and have no consequences for that. So yeah,
So
I did
so
reach.
so tell us about that because and I 100% agree with you. What did you get rejected from? So you applied to what be part of a league or what happened with all that?
Yeah, so there's within AFL anyway, there's a two-step process. One is if you decide to form a club and a team, you have to first affiliate with the league.
Mm,
And that doesn't give you the right to play, but it does give you access to the AFL's insurance so that you can start building momentum So being affiliated means that you can welcome everyone to your training spaces. If anyone gets hurt, they're going to be covered and there's no
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
Second step then is to be accepted into the league that you're applying for. So we'd applied to field a team in AFL Central Victoria League, Women's League.
Yeah.
And so we were rejected from both of those applications. So we weren't allowed to play in the league, but we also weren't allowed to be affiliated with the league.
Why?
So yeah.
Oh, no, go on. Keep going.
Oh,
That pisses
why?
me off.
Great
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
There was no, so legally under the AFL's rules, they didn't have to provide a reason, and so they never did.
Mm.
Yeah, and so we were left really not knowing why, not being able to address why, and then improve, and then get in the following year.
Mm.
And so I guess the way that our executives dealt with that was luckily we had a lawyer on our executive committee.
Yeah.
And so she knew how to then put pressure, create a media storm and start to get a lot of pushback happening. And then within that process, I was behind the scenes quietly working on this documentary.
Mm.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was by the end of the first year, a new league had formed, and we jumped ship and went to that new league, and they accepted us straight away.
So who gets to accept you? The head of that league, or still the same boffins in town?
No, it's actually got nothing to do with head office.
Okay.
So AFL Central is in Melbourne, and they look after the elite.
Yeah.
And because AFL is so big, they've created these 6 independent commissions. They are, and so there's one in Central Victoria, there's one in South, East, West. There's 6 of these, and they control who plays community sports in their patch. So it was them that decided, and so the league that we joined is run by a different body. But I'm happy to report that the league, the commission that rejected us, has since been disbanded. So that feels good.
Are they, I'm going to be sexist. Are they all men on these boards, these commissions, or?
They're mostly men, but there was, I think, 2 women. The tricky thing was we couldn't, because there was no transparency, so we couldn't find out who had voted and what the votes were. We were just told that we voted no. And so that might mean that out of 8 people that voted, 5 voted for and 3 voted against or something, or
Yeah.
vice versa. So we never found out who voted no. And, without giving too much away, there was a lot of really questionable things going on behind the scenes. So, I think it's just that really old school thing that decisions get to be made behind closed doors. There doesn't need to be any justification for decisions. They don't get questioned. And so whatever these people want goes, and everyone else is left to disappear quietly. And that was the idea, I think, that we would disappear quietly, but obviously we didn't.
And you didn't. Fantastic. It's still the patriarchy, isn't it? Because you the CEO of Australia Post and you buy a watch. There's no transparency there. It's like let's really raise the whatever. I want to now you're in your second season, and I wrote it down. Is it Riddle? Is it Riddle or Riddell District? Riddle District Football Netball League. So did you? So you joined them last year. So this is in 2023, and so this is 2024, your second season. So how many other teams are in this league? Just rough, like.
There is, I think, 7 teams in our league now.
Yeah.
Last year we had 6, and then this year a new team joined, so the league's grown this year. And we had, so us and another team moved from the Central Victoria League. So there was another team that was playing in that league, and they came across, and then a bunch of other teams started up. Yeah.
And are all so and you play every week, like it's just 7 every 7 weeks you play the same. Is yours the only gender diverse team, or like are all the others women's team? Okay, so did you inspire
No,
that, or
no, there was a team that had been around for a long time, had trans and gender diverse people in it. So no, we're not the only one. We're very different though in our culture to not all, but the majority of teams, I would say. Um, so yeah, there is definitely a difference between what we do. And I think, any team in our league would the experience of playing at our home ground against us is very different to playing any other team in the league. Like we really put on an event. It's not
yeah,
just about playing footy, it's about an afternoon for families to get down. We
yeah,
have a banner to run through that has usually some sort of slogan
yeah,
that is clever and speaks to something relevant to the state of the world.
yeah,
um, and yeah, and very little alcohol is at our events. It's very family friendly. There's kids and dogs, and yeah,
yeah,
it's totally different to being on the sidelines, particularly at night games at other clubs. It can feel very intimidating because it's
mm,
mostly quite drunk blokes on
mm,
the sidelines at
yeah.
games at other clubs. Yeah.
Mm. I'm just interested because it's kind of like, well, what are you doing well? And it's not just because you're a women's club or there's a lot of gender diversity. It's just like, what are you doing well as a footy club? Because a lot of footy clubs could learn from that. They could take that and make. I remember my dad played footy for Warragul, and then he played for Richmond for a bit, and I loved it back then. And if I look back, it was probably very bloody gendered. I was very, very sexist, probably, but I didn't notice because I was in the footy rooms when I was a kid, stealing their beers and having a great old time. Kicking the footy, and I didn't notice that I was a girl. But I just remember that it was very family. You'd go down to the training rooms, the whole family would go down on Sunday morning, and have a barbecue and that kind of stuff. And I really think that we're missing that. We've lost that, and a lot of the teenagers now are just lost because they're not participating in team sports, and particularly footy, because so many can attend, so many can be there. It's such a big thing. And I just I do have days where I kind of pine a little bit for that kind of, to go back to that, and not the sexism, but just the family, that everyone can calm, everyone feels safe, everyone's watching out
Mm,
for each other. Like my parents didn't ever even knew where we were, and it wasn't, they never had to, because they knew everyone was watching out for you. And I don't know whether I'm just an old fart, but I want those days back for our kids. And it sounds to me like the stuff that you're doing is verging on that. And really making sure
mm,
that people feel like it's a family and feel like it's
mm.
home to them.
I think in the past, and particularly, when you and I were younger and participating in sport, the world was so different because we didn't have so many pools. We didn't have technology. We didn't
Yeah,
have mobile phones. We didn't have anything else. And
yeah,
so the main activity to do on the weekend was to turn up to sports because that's where you would connect and find community.
mm,
But today we're pulled in so many different
yeah,
directions, and kids particularly have access to connect, feeling some sense of connection, even though it's very different
yeah,
on their phone. So they just are sitting there and they don't see the point in
mm,
getting out and going to this event, sporting event on the weekend. So yeah, it's the competition for our attention is really different.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I think what we're doing is making it so clear that this coming to watch our footy game is better than sitting at home on
yeah,
technology. It's better than sitting watching TV. It's better than gaming. It's better than scrolling through
mm,
Instagram,
mm,
because it gives you a sense of purpose.
yeah,
So I think because of the struggle that we had, we created such a clear identity and we rallied community as this act
mm,
of solidarity to join us.
Yeah.
and be part of something. Like I think what we're really missing these days is feeling like we're part of something.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, because although we have access to things that seem fulfilling, they're not, they're very hollow.
Mm.
And so what we're often doing is scrolling social media and seeing what other people are doing and feeling
Yeah.
like other people have got these amazing lives and
Yeah.
we're inspired, but we're sitting on the couch doing nothing.
Yeah.
So being able to turn up to a local footy match and feel like you're part of something bigger,
Mm.
I
Mm.
think is a big thing. And within that space, we're creating space where parents in particular, I think, are really excited for their kids to know what that's like. So some of the things that we are doing that I think are really important is removing gendered language from the club. And so, quite often when there's a group of footy players, a women's team, people will say, come on girls or come on ladies. And we don't say that at all. We say, come on Falks or come on team or come on mates.
Mm.
There's loads of other words you can use to remove gender.
Yeah.
And so within that, everyone feels like they belong.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what your gender. And kids are learning that it doesn't matter what your gender is, you can participate. So that's been a big thing. Just removing the barriers in lots of different ways. So like I mentioned before, really strongly advocating to make sure that transphobia and homophobia and racism are not welcome. And it's very, very, very clear that they're
Yeah.
not welcome in our club.
Yeah.
And we've got the people who are educated enough to have those conversations,
Yeah.
not in a way that is confronting. So it's walking up, explaining, and very calmly saying, what do you choose? Do you want to leave or do you want to stay and behave yourself?
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus, some bloke with a tinny going, don't fucking speak like that. Like
Yeah.
that's a different thing.
Yeah.
And then just things that engage players. So last year, the club introduced paid childcare at one training session and the games,
Wow.
so that women and gender diverse people with kids who don't
Mm.
have family support to look after the kids can still bring their kid, know the kid's being looked after, and get on with playing and training without being distracted or feeling like they're
Wow.
interrupting. So that I know was huge for some of our players to
Mm.
really allow them to keep turning up regularly. So yeah, there's lots of things. There's advocating. So our execs work really tirelessly behind the scenes to make sure things like, when we went to sign up at the start of the league last year, and in putting in your details, there was a spot where you had to select your gender, and there was only male or female. And so immediately our exec committee got onto the league and said, this isn't good enough. We need to add more options. So the league did.
Oh, good.
So there's just kind of all these noticing things and then bringing it to the right people's attention and making change. So yeah, I think that just comes across to everyone that's turning up.
I love that. I love it. Like, it's not hard. And I think this is a thing, and in well, it's in a very vague defense of people. Sometimes we don't think about it because it's not in our sphere. It just doesn't get under our nose often enough to worry about it.
Yeah.
But when it does, the opportunity to make change is actually quite simple. It's a well, it's not simple. The stuff that you're doing is not simple. It takes a lot of work, but it's not rocket science. It's not like you've got some secret thing.
No.
You're just caring about.
There's a couple of steps. Yeah, it's first being conscious, and then second, caring enough to make the effort. It takes effort. And persisting when it's not super easy at first. But generally, most of the things that we've done that really have made a big difference are free. There's things that cost a little bit extra from a club perspective. Like we also offer our uniforms. There's a mask fit and a femme fit. So you can choose the shorts and the training top you feel most comfortable in. So you don't have to wear, a women's style if you don't want to wear style. And so that's obviously a little bit more time consuming and a little bit more expensive to have two options rather than one. But it means that everyone feels comfortable every time they put their uniform on. And so they want to turn up. And just knowing that people are going to the effort to really, even if it was one person that felt more included, that's huge. That's enough of a reason to do it.
Oh,
But
well,
of course, the more you do those things, the more people turn up.
yeah, absolutely. I would love that. I wear all men's clothes right down to mid
Yeah,
jocks. I mean, I do have to wear a
yeah,
women's bra because otherwise I'd be hanging boobies everywhere. But like I love men's clothes, because I just think
yeah,
my body fits better. And I'm so
totally.
much more comfortable. And so, and when like the tennis and the little tennis skirts and the netball and little netball skirts, and I did play netball till I was 21 or something like that. But it's kind of like, yeah, like this isn't. I look like I'm in drag, when I get into
Yeah,
women's
totally,
clothes. And it's like
totally.
a friend of
Yeah,
mine keeps wanting to make me up, and I say, "Oh Jesus, no, I look like I'm in drag. It's not really my kind of thing." But anyway, not that there's anything
yeah.
wrong
So
with
when you,
that, but I don't want to dress up like that.
yeah, and when you feel like that in the uniform you're supposed to wear to play your best,
You
you're
can't.
never going to turn up as your full self. You're going to
No,
be thinking about how uncomfortable you feel or noticing it's pulling in an odd way, and
of course,
you're not playing your
no,
best. You're not completely present. So
no,
it's just disadvantaging. Like if all you're thinking about is winning, if that's what's most important to the club, then even that is a reason to create
yeah,
more options for people, because
yeah.
people that turn up as their full selves are going to participate better. They're going to be stronger players because they feel comfortable.
I think comfort is the be all and end all. That is my absolute number one priority of everything is being comfortable. And I do a lot of, I do team building, leadership facilitation, all that kind of stuff. And I say to people, I will not be turning up in a shirt. And because I can't get shirts to fit me, they just don't fit me. Even men's shirts
Yeah.
don't fit me. Women's shirts don't fit me. They just don't fit this chunky little bod. And it's kind of
Yeah.
like I'd be pulling at it the whole time. I'd be pulling. There's no way I'd bloody deliver good stuff if I was constantly pulling at a shirt. So I agree that. Well, I've absolutely loved this conversation, and I look forward to catching up in person. I just love what you've done. I hope this movie goes places, and I really do hope that half the nation watch it. I've watched it; it is fantastic. Where can one? The two things I want to ask: where can people find you to follow you? And I'm going to put links in the show notes anyway. But some people don't. Some people are too lazy; they just want to hear you say it. And also, where can people watch the film?
Yeah, sure. So I guess there's two places. One is through the film. You can go to equalthecontest.com.
Yeah,
Sorry, just equalthecontest.au, no .com,
yeah,
equalthecontest.au, and you can find out everywhere the film is playing. So we've been in a bunch of film festivals, 8 film festivals in Australia and around the world, and also we're doing
wow,
public screenings still around
yeah,
Australia.
yeah,
So that's all available on the website. And also, the film's been picked up by Umbrella Distribution. So it's also streaming online at the moment. So if you want to
yeah,
watch it in the comfort of your home, you can do that on Apple TV, Google Play, Beamer Film, and a bunch of others.
yeah,
So again, just go to the website and you can find all of that. You can follow along on Instagram at Equal the Contest.
yep,
Or if you want to see the kind of work I do when I'm not crazily making a feature documentary,
yes,
I'm
yeah.
also on Instagram at MDP Photo Video. So that's all of my other work.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'll put all those in the show notes. If people live up near Castlemaine, they should go and check out a game of the Mount Alexander. Are you still called Mount Alexander Falcons? Yeah, you didn't change it.
Yeah, we're experimenting with our name. So recently, with Reconciliation Week, we sought permission from First Nations people and changed our name to Leanganuk Banyul Falcons. That's the
Yeah,
First Nations name for our region. We've also been playing around with removing the women's from our
yeah,
from our name, but it's
yeah,
all a work in progress. So we're
yeah.
continuing to evolve and work out what our players want, and the executive committee are doing an amazing job with that.
Well, regardless, and even if people don't, whether you change your name, whatever you do, and even if people don't follow you, the Riddle District Football and Netball League sounds like it's the place to be anyway. So if you're up from that area, go start following there, start tooting your horn in those grounds rather than any of the other ones that are not supportive. So how else can I say it? That's pretty brutally honest, isn't it? Without naming people. So I love it. Well, thank you
Come
so
along to our home game at Harcourt, and it's a really amazing time. It's even if you hate footy, you'll love that arvo.
Harcourt. Yeah, that's where your home ground is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I hope people do because I'm sure there are people from that area that listen to this. So I hope people do that. And yeah, fantastic. I may have to come up for a weekend and just stay up there and just go to a footy match just to
yeah.
experience it. That sounds bloody good,
Do
actually. Yeah, I know. I know. It'll take me half the weekend to drive up there, and we've talked about that, haven't
it.
we?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I absolutely love your story. Absolutely love it. Thank
No
you.
worries. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. See ya.